New this morning, neighbors could hear blood-curdling screams when a New York mom arrived home to find two of her young children killed. Police in Manhattan say the 2-year-old boy and 6-year-old girl were stabbed to death in the bathtub, and the nanny was on the floor. She apparently stabbed herself. She's in critical condition.
In a peaceful neighborhood of Upper West Side, Manhattan, where each day passed with the laughter of children and the tranquility of family life, an unexpected tragedy unfolded. That afternoon, as the mother returned home from a swimming lesson with her youngest daughter, their familiar apartment suddenly felt dark and foreboding. No greetings, no signs of life, only darkness and an eerie silence filled the air. The bathroom door was ajar, a faint light seeping through the crack, leading to a scene beyond the worst of nightmares. In that moment, the serenity of a small family was utterly shattered by the mysterious and horrifying actions of someone they once trusted as a part of their family. Background and case developments. On October 25, 2012, in the bustling Upper West Side of Manhattan, New York, a small family was living in the peace of their everyday life. This family consisted of a loving couple and their 3 young children, supported by a nanny who had been working with them for 2 years. That afternoon, the mother, after taking her youngest daughter to a swimming lesson, planned to return home to reunite with her older children. The children, Lucia, 6 years old, and Leo, 2 years old, had been left at home under the care of their nanny. This was a familiar routine for the family, trusting that their children were being looked after by someone reliable. However, within a few hours, a horrific tragedy unfolded, forever changing their lives. When the mother returned home around 5 p.m., a sense of unease began to creep in as she was unable to reach the nanny or her children. Arriving at the apartment, she noticed something unusual. The apartment was eerily dark, silent, and no one responded to her calls. Growing worried, she asked the building's doorman, who confirmed that no one had left the apartment. Determined to check further, she went back into the apartment. As she walked through each room, everything seemed to be in its usual place. However, as she approached the bathroom, she noticed a sliver of light coming from beneath the door. A feeling of terror peaked as she opened the door to find Lucia and Leo lying unresponsive in the bathtub, both with severe injuries on their bodies. The nanny was also in the bathroom, injured from an apparent attempt to harm herself. For a brief moment, their eyes met in a fateful exchange, and the mother could do nothing but scream in utter anguish. She ran out of the apartment, calling for help. Her panicked screams prompted neighbors and the building's doorman to immediately call the police. When the police and emergency responders arrived, they encountered a deeply distressing scene. The bathroom bore evidence of a violent incident with signs of struggle and disarray. 2 knives were found, one in the sink and another in the hallway nearby. Tragically, both Lucia and Leo were found unresponsive and later confirmed to have passed away. Investigations revealed that Lucia had sustained multiple injuries, while Leo had suffered fewer but no less severe ones. Evidence suggested that both children had tried to resist, with Lucia showing signs of having made a determined effort to protect herself.
In other news, tonight there is a growing memorial outside an Upper West Side apartment building where a nanny is accused of killing 2 children.
As news spread, the surrounding community was deeply shocked. Neighbors recalled the mother's panicked screams upon discovering the tragedy. One neighbor described the sound as the cry of primal fear and anguish, beyond words. The father of the 2 children, who was away on a business trip at the time, received the devastating news through a call from the police. Hearing a voicemail from his wife, filled only with screams, he immediately knew that something terrible had happened. When he arrived at the hospital, he was met with the heartbreaking sight of his 2 beloved children, now lifeless.
They came to the Upper West Side today and stared, silently, hopelessly trying to make some sense of all the horror and pain here. But how in the world do you make sense out of this?
Investigations following the incident revealed that the nanny might have been under significant financial stress, compounded by feelings of pressure from her work. Some of her relatives also noted that she had shown signs of psychological instability in the days leading up to the event. However, most importantly, no one in the family or the surrounding community could recognize the true extent of the risk posed by her mental state. The nanny continued with her daily activities, appearing outwardly normal. She had even visited a psychologist the day before the tragedy, but there were no indications that she intended to harm anyone.
Investigators are trying to figure out this morning what could have made a New York family's caretaker turn on the children she was paid to protect.
Keep going! On the floor of the bathroom is a nanny who apparently had inflicted wounds on her throat.
Herbert Klein lives next door and heard the mother screaming.
She's crying out, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? My life is ruined. I have no children. I have no children.
Police escorted Krim from the scene after dark with her only surviving child, a sheet draped over their heads. The 50-year-old nanny survived the wounds to her throat, and this morning police say she's in critical but stable condition at a nearby hospital.
Information about the perpetrator. Jocelyn Ortega, 50 years old, worked as a nanny for the Krim family for 2 years. Ortega was born in Santiago de los Caballeros, Dominican Republic, and later immigrated to the United States, where she lived with her sister, niece, and son in Manhattan. Initially, Ortega was introduced to the Krim family through an acquaintance and received positive feedback from them. However, after the crime, it was discovered that some of the information in Ortega's referral records had been falsified. Ortega was treated like family by the Krim family, even traveling with them. However, before the tragedy occurred, Ortega showed signs of mental instability, financial stress, and was suspected of being jealous of the Krim family's happy life. Before the incident, Ortega displayed numerous signs of instability, such as fatigue, stress, and isolation. Although she claimed to hear voices in her head directing her actions, forensic experts determined that Ortega was fully aware of her behavior. Factors such as work pressure, jealousy, and a psychological crisis contributed to the calculated crime she committed. The investigation and trial process. On October 25, 2012, law enforcement arrived at the scene to find a deeply tragic situation. 2 children, Lucia and Leo Krim, were discovered in the bathtub with fatal stab wounds, and the bathroom was covered in blood, suggesting a violent and prolonged attack. The weapons used were identified as 2 knives, one found in the sink and the other in the hallway. Jocelyn Ortega, the Krim family's nanny, was arrested at the scene after being found in critical condition, having attempted to harm herself. She was rushed to the hospital and survived after receiving medical treatment. In her initial statement, Ortega mentioned work-related stress as a factor influencing her actions, but psychological and forensic evaluations found no evidence to support this claim. In the following months, the investigation focused on clarifying Ortega's motives and her level of awareness at the time of the crime. Ortega underwent multiple psychological evaluations, but experts concluded that she did not suffer from a serious mental illness. She was fully aware that her actions were wrong. The investigation revealed that Ortega was facing severe financial difficulties, having lost her apartment and being unable to pay her son's tuition. Prosecutors argued that her jealousy of the Krim family's happy life and dissatisfaction with her job led to the violent act. Ortega also stated that she felt pressured by the additional cleaning work, despite the Krim family offering to pay extra, which deepened her frustration.
That Manhattan nanny who stabbed 2 children in her care has been indicted. 50-year-old Jocelyn Ortega has been indicted now with first-degree murder. She is charged with killing 6-year-old Lucia Krim and her 2-year-old brother Leo in their Manhattan apartment back on October 25th. The children's mother found them dead when she returned home from an errand with another child.
The trial of Jocelyn Ortega began in 2018 after 6 years of preparation and legal disputes over her mental state. Prosecutors argued that Ortega had planned to murder the 2 children and then commit suicide. They pointed out that Ortega had prepared 2 knives from the kitchen, chose a time when Marina Krim was not home, and left important documents as a form of arranging her affairs. Forensic evidence showed that Lucia's wounds indicated a fierce struggle, affirming that Ortega's actions were intentional and carried out with full awareness. The defense attempted to argue that Ortega suffered from an undiagnosed mental disorder and was possessed by demons, but the prosecutors rejected this due to the lack of reliable medical evidence. Marina Krim, the mother of the victims, gave an emotional testimony, describing in detail the painful scene when she discovered her children's bodies, which further fueled the outrage over Ortega's actions. After 2 days of deliberation, the jury concluded that Ortega was guilty of first-degree and second-degree murder.
Trial against a nanny accused of killing 2 young children in her care got underway today in Lower Manhattan. Prosecutors say in 2012, Jocelyn Ortega stabbed a 6-year-old girl and her 2-year-old brother inside their family's Upper West Side apartment. CBS News' Hazel Sanchez has more now from the courthouse.
Nanny Jocelyn Ortega sat emotionless as prosecutors detailed the unthinkable murders of the 2 beautiful children who were under her care.
Marina Krim opened the bathroom door and saw the bloodied, lifeless bodies of her 6-year-old daughter, 2-year-old son, stacked in the bathtub, their eyes open, covered in blood, staring ahead. And between her and her dead babies was the defendant, the person responsible for this atrocity, standing, holding one of the knives that she had used to kill those babies. These are the undisputed facts in this case. And these are the facts and the evidence that will prove to you, beyond a reasonable doubt, that the defendant intentionally murdered Lulu and Leo Krim on October 25th, 2012. That she knew what she was doing when she killed them, and that she knew that killing them was wrong.
I will ask that you determine whether or not my client had an ability to understand and perceive and confront her illness on October 25th, 12. I will ask you to determine whether she had the prerequisite mental state.
Objection as to the summation entirely.
Respectfully accept. The insanity defense to be proffered by Jocelyn Ortega is deeply rooted in the cultural and legal traditions of our democratic society. While on the one hand there is legitimate need to hold and punish criminal defendants who are accountable and responsible pursuant to our laws for their actions, there is also the
Judge, well, I'm going to instruct you on the law. That's what I instruct you on. You must follow. Okay? Go ahead.
I will argue and the defense will show.
Objection as to I will argue.
I will prove and the defense will show that it is wrong and a wrong has been committed here, an intentional wrong. If a person is capable of that intent, was she capable of forming an intent to kill on October 25th, 12? That is the question here. And I will ask you to determine at the end of this case whether or not these acts were driven by my client's acute psychotic state. My client's, Judge, this is what I...
Overruled. Go ahead.
Whether or not these acts that are set out on People's Direct were driven by my client's acute psychotic state. Were they driven by her delusions, her hallucinations, her dissociation, and her severe depression? Or were they intentional?
Jocelyn Ortega viciously and violently slaughtered Lucia Krim and Leo Krim on October 25th, 2012. Intentionally and deliberately.
And she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for being fully aware of her actions. The case not only brought justice to the Krim family, but also motivated them to advocate for changes in the law. Marina and Kevin Krim pushed for stricter background checks and reference verifications for those in childcare positions to prevent similar tragedies in the future. For society, the case raised concerns about the hiring of nannies and the importance of paying attention to the mental health of those working in family environments. It also emphasized the role of stringent legal regulations to protect children from potential dangers.
Marina Krim didn't wait to be asked any questions, but voice trembling, her body shaking, burst aloud in the courtroom, calling Yoselin Ortega liar.
It's like a total horror movie. I walk down the hall and I see the light on under the door, she said. I see Lulu. I knew that she was dead. She's lying in the bathtub and her eyes are open. I see Leo next to her. They had blood on them. Then I see the defendant, blood all over her and eyes bugging out. All I remember saying to her is, "I hate you." Prosecutors say Lulu tried desperately to defend herself.
She knew what was happening, she understood what the defendant was doing, and she fought to live. And the defendant repaid Lulu's resistance with almost 30 different stab and slash wounds to her body and her neck.
The devastated mother says, quote, "She killed my best friends." And when leaving the courtroom, Krim turned to Ortega and said, "You're gross. You're disgusting."
A defense attorney asked Krim about talking to police after the murders. Krim grew upset and yelled, "I don't remember what I said that day. I was grieving in a massive way." Krim testified a few weeks before the murders, she saw the nanny, quote, "looking at me with this glare on her face that was just pure evil, a really weird, mean look."
We saw jurors in tears as they left the courtroom after hearing Marina Krim's heartbreaking testimony. The defendant, Yoselin Ortega, remained emotionless throughout the entire hearing.
From emotional to angry, it was day 2 of testimony in the case of the Upper West Side nanny charged with killing 2 children in her care. Today, defiant mother Marina Krim was back on the stand. At times, she directly addressed her former nanny, Yoselin Ortega, and called her evil. Eyewitness News reporter Rob Nelson has the story.
After finishing 2 days of gut-wrenching testimony, Marina Krim again lashed out at the accused killer of her 2 children today, shouting, "You're evil, you're evil, please get me out of here," as she left the courtroom in a fit of anger and grief.
The Krim family endured an unimaginable pain following the deaths of their children, Lucia and Leo. The shock left deep psychological scars on both the parents and their surviving daughter, Nessie, the only one left after the tragedy. However, instead of succumbing to the tragedy, Marina and Kevin Krim found a way to transform their pain into a driving force for positive change. They established the Lulu and Leo Fund, a nonprofit organization aimed at supporting arts and science education for children, spreading the joy of learning and discovery. They also welcomed 2 more children after the incident, Felix and Linus, bringing new hope while continuing to honor Lucia and Leo as the guiding stars in their family's life. The case sent shockwaves through society, particularly in how people perceive the safety of children within the family. It made many parents more concerned about hiring nannies or entrusting their children to strangers for care. The case highlighted the importance of thorough background checks and reference verifications, as well as the responsibility of families in monitoring the psychological state and behavior of caregivers. Additionally, this event raised greater awareness about the significance of mental health, especially for those in high-pressure jobs like childcare.
We were divided at the beginning, and we were divided until the moment we made the decision.
I think I can speak on behalf of everybody. I say we feel great in the decision that we rendered.
This was a very difficult decision for all of us. While the basic facts were very clear from the beginning, we also wanted to be sure that we were giving everybody a fair opportunity. It was not a decision we reached lightly or easily. There were some raised voices and a lot of tears. But I think we all feel good that we addressed all of the issues and fairly weighed everything that was presented to us.
From this tragedy, several important lessons have been learned. First and foremost, the protection of children must be a top priority, especially when it comes to hiring individuals who directly care for them. Parents need to carefully check the experience, motivations, and mental health of nannies or caregivers. Secondly, society must focus on the mental health of workers in family environments, helping them reduce stress and avoid unfortunate consequences. Finally, advocating for changes in the law, such as requiring thorough reference checks and penalizing fraudulent information, is essential to ensure the safety of children in the future. The Krim family, through their pain, has powerfully spread this message.
With a look of disgust on his face, Kevin Krim sat on a courtroom bench just a few yards away from Yoselin Ortega, the woman he once trusted to care for his children. Her attorney says the 55-year-old suffers from severe psychosis and depression and heard voices telling her to kill the kids. But a video shown during the trial contradicts the defense claim, as Ortega is heard saying she never heard or saw Satan.
Do you remember at all talking to her about that you felt that you're being possessed by devil? The devil was taking control of your body?
No. Prosecutors claim Ortega acted out of anger against the Krims, particularly the children's mother, Marina Krim, for allegedly overworking her. Marina Krim was not in court today. The jurors are expected to begin deliberating tomorrow. In Lower Manhattan, Hazel Sanchez, CBS 2 News.
A jury today convicted a nanny of murder in the brutal stabbing of 2 young children in her care.
Yoselin Ortega was found guilty of killing 6-year-old Lulu Krim and her 2-year-old brother Leo.
Find the defendant guilty, not guilty, or not responsible by reason of mental disease or defect.
Yoselin Ortega sat nearly still as 4 guilty verdicts were read, only moving once to wipe a tear from her cheek.
It was now time for Yoselin to be sentenced.
A few words, Your Honor. This defendant murdered 2 innocent children. She did it intentionally. She did it with the full knowledge of the consequences of her actions. Now is the time for justice. Justice for Lulu, justice for Leo, justice for Marina, and Kevin, and Nessie, justice for the people of the state of New York, justice for all of the people who are part of the Krim's life, who love the Krim family and love their children. And it's time for justice to be meted out for horrific acts of violence that this defendant inflicted upon those children and upon the parents and the family. Nobody saw signs of a serious mental illness because there was no serious mental illness. That's what the jury found in rejecting her defense. And that's the way that she should be sentenced.
And more importantly, it is right that she will go from being hated by the world to being forgotten by the world before she's even dead. While Lulu and Leo's siblings and legions of family and friends, even friends who never knew them, will never forget their inspiring legacies. In my best moments, I feel Lulu and Leo inspiring me and carrying me forward. In my most difficult moments, I try to ask myself what Lulu and Leo would choose to do. It's the best beacon of hope, the best guidance most of us could ever hope to have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marina also spoke at the sentencing hearing.
My family and I, we create and build. The defendant may think she destroyed Lulu and Leo, but she is a failure in this too. Lulu and Leo are powerful forces. There are 2 stars now that will always lead us forward. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm very sorry for everything that happened. Pero ojalá que no, but I hope that no one goes through what I have gone through. Also, many people wish me all the worst.
My life is in the hands of God. I ask for a great deal of forgiveness. God, to Marina, Kevin.
From the tragedy of the Krim family, we can see that protecting children and caring for the mental health of those working in family environments is of utmost importance. Parents need to be more cautious when selecting caregivers for their children, thoroughly checking their background and psychological state to ensure the safety of the children. At the same time, society needs to focus on supporting the mental well-being of those working in this field, reducing stress and helping them cope with the challenges of the job. Efforts to change policies, such as requiring thorough reference checks and strictly punishing those who falsify information, should also be strengthened to better protect children in the future. Equally important is the role of the community in supporting the victim's family. The love and solidarity from friends, neighbors, and charitable organizations helped the Krim family overcome their unimaginable pain, reminding us of the power of compassion and unity in the most difficult times. From this, we understand that in a humane society, each person can contribute to creating positive change and safeguarding the most important values.